That's right. Hi, everyone. Good morning. Welcome. Let's start with a kick. It's not my first time here, as you probably noticed from the video, but it's the first time, and I hope the first of a series of such appointments where we decided with Luis to start presenting the figures about the book market at Readmagine. Just a couple of words to remind, if you don't know us, the Federation of European Publishers is an umbrella organization. We have, as members, 29 national associations of publishers of books, learned journals, and educational materials from 28 countries in Europe. So we represent the vast majority of book publishers in Europe, and our main mission is to do advocacy on behalf of publishers with the European institutions, but we also collect, compile, and present the best available figures on the book market in Europe. Best available doesn't mean that they're perfect. In general, I always say, don't trust anyone who talks about figures in the book sector, not even me, but at least I kind of know what I'm doing, and I'm trying to put some sense into everything that you hear about. So take the figures you'll see as indicators of trends, as like look at the story behind rather than the specific figures, because I'm not saying that I made them up, but there's a certain degree of estimation and a certain degree, well, there are different levels of reliability of the figures. But I still think that it's a worthy exercise to try and put book publishing on the map also with some quantitative data. So, first of all, we start with the core data, the main indicators, and I want to take a step back and show you where we come from. We've been trying to do this statistical exercise for about 20 years now. And you see that up until the financial crisis in 2008, the book sector was, in terms of, this is net turnover, net publishers turnover, pretty healthy, with 2007 being a glorious year with 24.5 billion euros of net turnover from sales of books. Then obviously came the financial crisis, and things weren't so great for a number of years. I think the financial crisis was not the only explanation for this decrease in turnover in the following, well, pretty much 10 years or so. But the other reasons, apart from the financial crisis, are, for me, still open to interpretation. It could be that it was when digital started really becoming a serious part of the business and with a different level of profitability. Could be that digital brought about a decrease in the levels of reading. There are many possible factors, but we saw clearly a decrease and then a sort of stagnation of turnover in the years after the crisis. To a point that, to be fair, you see it there, the COVID crisis, despite being really disruptive, did not overall affect turnover that much. Of course, behind that decrease of maybe 1% in overall turnover, there are a lot of different situations. Countries perform widely differently. Segments perform widely differently. Just think of, on one hand, children's books did great because parents needed something to give to the kids that were stuck at home all day and they couldn't spend 20 hours a day on a screen. So children's books performed fantastically during lockdowns. On the other hand, imagine what happened to travel books. They risked being wiped out of the shelves. And then also some players managed better than others. Online bookstores, whenever they managed to operate, did great. Physical retail, of course, had a terrible time, but small, independent, neighborhood bookstores did much better than bookstore chains. So there's a huge variety behind that minus 1%. And then came 2021, the highest increase in turnover that we had seen in 20 years, probably, plus 6.5%. Again, many possible interpretations. People had rediscovered the pleasure of reading and did not want to go back to, at least some extent, to other activities. People were still hesitant because, 2021, COVID was still very present. So people figured that, well, they might as well keep on reading and put off that going back to the cinema, the theater, the concert for a while longer. Only time will tell. We'll see in the coming years whether this uptick, this really relevant uptick, remains. For the time being, from the figures we have from 2022, and we will be able to present a detailed picture at the Frankfurt Book Fair, our second annual appointment with data. But for the time being, from what we see, it seems that in 2022, things were pretty much at the same level of 2021. Again, with differences, we'll see it country by country, but I'd say that in most cases, anyone who performed in 2022 pretty much at the same level of 2021, they're quite happy because 2021 was such a good year. And but again, 2022, brought brought the war in Ukraine, brought the paper crisis, the energy crisis. So we were just thinking that we could raise our head again after COVID, and there came another couple of big blows. So if things were really like that, if 2022 actually finished at the level of 2021, again, I don't think we could complain. But once again, with, as always, winners and losers. Title-wise, we haven't processed already enough data to see for 2022, but, well, one thing, first of all, the thing that always strikes politicians when we tell them, you produce more than 500,000 different new titles, new book titles per year. We reached some 610,000 5 years ago. Then there has been a bit of a decrease or stagnation. To some extent, in particular, as of 2020, COVID caused the cancellation or at least a delay of many projects, so that number of titles went down, but it went down again in 2021, and it's, let's say, not necessarily a bad thing. It might mean that there is an effort to rationalize the number of titles. In times of crisis, one possible reaction is to produce even more titles, hoping really that something works. But it can also be that decreasing titles is a good sign because there is an attempt to focus on a smaller number, but to try and make those more rentable. Another striking figure, again, for the time being, we have data from 2021, but more than 2 billion copies were sold in Europe, and that's not counting Germany. We didn't have the figure from Germany, but Germany is the biggest market. I think they'll easily add another 500 million at least, maybe more. So more than 2.5 billion copies of books sold in Europe, which, okay, worth 500 million is not that much, but if you try and imagine where you put 2.5 billion books, I think I like the image that that's how much we sell every year in Europe. A word about formats. Again, the detailed data still from 2021. We'll have the new ones in Frankfurt, but that's just because, first of all, as you probably know, a lot of talk is done about digital, but most sales are print. Print represents some 85% of turnover. Again, huge differences between segments, huge. Some segments are almost 100% digital, some segments are almost 100% print. Somewhere in between is the average, and we have 85% print, some 12 and something percent ebook, and audiobook. It's all about audiobooks now, and you will see there is a reason. Enters the picture. We estimated 2.5% of the market 2 years ago, and I'm pretty sure that's already an underestimation, and I expect the figure to go probably as high as 4 or 5% already for 2022. As you'll see what kind of growth audiobooks have shown in the last years. And now let's see country by country for the countries for which we have data, and you see that there is a bit of a separation in Europe, unfortunately, how things went in detail in 2022. So first of all, unfortunately, the Iron Curtain is back, and we don't hear anything from beyond the curtain. But I really hope we've been working for years and we'll keep struggling to get more information about the other half of the continent. But so this is change in, and I'm grateful. Well, I knew it that we have this huge screen because I'm pretty sure you can see even the figures there. Which is not always the case when I do this kind of presentation, but I was counting on this kind of screen. And I also hope that most of you are not colorblind, because I'm fixating with using greens and reds. But I have a colleague in the office who's colorblind asking, what do you think about this? You taking a piss or what? You know I'm colorblind. Oh, yes. Okay, sorry. And so this is 2022, the change, total turnover. Most cases, because it's early days, it's about the trade sector, which represents pretty much half of the market, because education, scholarly publishing, they have different cycles, so the data come in usually later. And this has changed against 2021. You see why we expect, all in all, to have the same level of turnover as the year before, because we have more or less half of the markets still growing, even growing strong. Iceland, Norway. Well, Portugal, biggest increase, but Portugal was one of the countries that took the worst hit during the crisis, so they're still pretty much recovering. But big markets, continental Europe, Italy, France, Germany, -4, -2, something that, again, it's not that bad considering how well 2021 did. UK they had a very, very good year in 2022. They had a good one in the year before as well, but still growing. And well, a few other markets growing. The Netherlands, Austria, a tiny bit. So this is global turnover. This is just print book sales, and here you see already how, for example, in Nordic countries, growth is coming mostly from digital. Finland changes even from positive to negative. Sweden goes down a bit more. Denmark goes down more. Whereas the main markets, more or less, digital and print, are showing similar trends. But keep an eye on the Scandinavian countries, on Nordic countries, because there's something interesting going on. We see ebooks not doing great. There's also a matter of ebook sales moving into different kind of business models where it's even more difficult to capture the actual sales. Audiobooks going strong, 18% in Finland, 8% in Sweden, 20% in Norway, 4% in Italy, 8% in the UK. And now this is physical sales, so sales in bookstores, shops, some cases supermarkets. This is something we've been seeing last year and already 2 years ago. So it seems, but also you can confirm maybe, that readers are going back to buying in bookstores. Of course, they had no choice most of the time during COVID. They had to buy online. In most cases, readers seem to be going back to bookstores, and we see increases, well, amazing in the UK, almost 20% increase in physical sales, but pretty much everywhere, except, again, in the Nordics, where, again, clearly, people are reading more, are buying more, but it's digital, and then digital you don't go and buy in a store. And the other side of the medal, online sales, obviously, going down in most cases. Strikingly, again, the UK, Portugal, but in most cases, well, Denmark, that's one of the countries where sales are going down to Kur, so every aspect is negative. But otherwise, we see, in most cases, sales in bookstores picking up, sales online going down. But again, now we put this in perspective because nowadays, whenever you talk about any kind of figures, the question is, but what about compared to 2019, the last normal year? And I hope one day we'll be able to stop needing to refer to 2019 as the last normal year, but for the time being, we still do. So this is the change in turnover 2022 compared to 2019. And here is a bit of good news, because everyone pretty much is doing fine, not 100%. You see the outlier there, but in general, things have been pretty good in terms of book sales, book turnover. Nordics, extraordinary, but Italy, France, Spain, UK, doing very well. And then there's a bit of a problem with Germany. And it is a problem because Germany is by far the biggest market in Europe. And there's something, it's, to some extent, there's a hesitation. People, in times of economic uncertainty, Germans, more than many others, tend to save. Germany has always been famous for its high level of saving, and in times where high inflation, geopolitical uncertainty, and whatever, you name it, the Germans just don't like to spend on anything, including books. Usually, they used to say that of the Dutch too, but the Dutch apparently are willing to spend on books. Germans are really not spending that much on books, and again, that's bad, considering that that's by far the biggest market in Europe. Print books, same story as before. So print books have done well, more or less everywhere, but not so much in the Nordics, where growth has been driven by digital, and most of all, by audio. And that's why I said, prepare for something really interesting. Look at what audiobooks have done in 3 years. 113% in Denmark, 226% almost increase in Finland, 178% in Italy, 80% Norway, 85% in Sweden, almost 70% in the UK. So yeah, obviously something is going on in the audiobook sector. It might be that what was expected from ebooks and didn't actually happen with ebooks is happening with audiobooks, so that we're opening to new audiences. Because we see that finally, to some extent, the people who are reading, listening to audiobooks are, to some extent, a different audience compared to the classic readers. You also have the traditional, the strong readers, but it might be that the audiobooks are finally opening new inroads into new segments. And this level of growth, of course, it's impossible to maintain for many years, but for the time being, it's something really striking. And it's bringing in a lot of changes, because producing audiobooks is also very different. It's not, it's much more different than from ebooks, between ebooks and print books, because you need a studio, you need recording artists, you need, well, it's a complete different setup. But there is, for the time being, a lot of growth, so it might be that the investment is justified. Again, bit of, well, in a way, bad news. the fact that sales in bookstores are not back to the levels of 2019 almost anywhere, and that we as publisher think is bad news because we rely on a diverse, healthy network of retailers of all kinds to maintain well, the sector in good shape. We cannot rely only on a few or one online retailer that in the long term would not be sustainable. So unfortunately, sales in bookstores have not recovered yet to the level of 2019, and on the other hand, obviously, online sales across the pandemic, despite the fact that in the last year and a half people are going back to bookstores, but they remain hugely higher than before, with countries like Italy and Spain, 60% more online sales than 3 years ago, actually 4 years ago by now, for example. And finally, what do we know about the year so far? So we have collected some data, again, turnover, and again, mostly for the trade segment. In most cases, January to April, unless specified there. And again, we see a bit of a mixed picture, with finally some, we hope, good news coming from Germany, where maybe there's a bit more confidence. France doing fine, Spain doing quite all right. Among the Nordics, Iceland doing very well. The others, so-so, but again, they have been growing pretty much non-stop. So it's also to some extent acceptable. Italy pretty much at the same level of the previous year. So again, we'll see. It's early to tell, but we have indications that, well, things are more or less okay. We also see that for now, the energy crisis is easing up a bit. The paper crisis is easing up a bit. Geopolitical situation, no, but there's, as always, many factors in play. And finally, all considered, again, looking to 2019, the last normal year, things are good in most cases. Germany, if they manage to confirm the good trend, would finally recover to the point of being back at the level of the last normal years. Other countries doing pretty well, but again, you always have to think what's behind the figures. Nordics, you've seen it, it's mainly digital audiobooks, which means new, different business model. It means subscriptions. Is it sustainable? That's been the topic of many talks here. We still don't have an answer. Still, online sales, will people go back to bookstores? That has also implications for the sustainability. But at least overall, the fact that people seem to have rediscovered the pleasure of books is, for us, reason for hope. But with still many open questions. And with that, thank you very much. I allow myself 2 seconds to, as Luis said, I'm opening and closing. I invite you all to the innovation talk that I'll have with some colleagues at 5:15 in the room next door. We'll talk about data, not this kind of data, readers' data, but I don't want to spoil anything. Just if you're still around, 5:15, we're there. And now, if you have any questions about these data, well, thanks for your attention, and here we are.